Let me tell you my story so that you can learn to some extent the meaning of relationships. I am Tom, 34 years old, working as a lab technician with the local police department. I had a wife named Julie, 30 years old, who also interned at our organization. We had been married for 4 years after having been in a relationship for 2 years. My work was mainly associated with the lab as I had to run different blood tests and DNA samples. Most of the day, Julie entered our organization as an intern because she was doing a PhD in criminology. Hence, she had to see the police work closely. Nothing was required for her to observe my work. Yet her attraction towards blood was a bit strange and intense. She would come to my lab and sit with me for hours. She would eventually follow me whenever I had to go to crime scenes. That's why I couldn't resist but accept her presence everywhere. She was recently divorced and had no children. Yet her blonde figure was no less than a teen girl. She would smile with her eyes shining. I had been a reserved and a love man throughout my life. I preferred the company of books and my thoughts, but all changed. From the day she entered my life, there was something attractive about her carefree nature. I felt drawn to her like a magnet. Over the next few weeks after her joining, I would see myself hoping to glimpse her and her smile. Eventually we started talking to each other and I was amazed at how easy it was to build a relationship with her. We became friends quickly. I loved how she carried herself with cheerful vibes. Even if she was tense, her presence was like a breath of fresh air in my routine. With every passing day, I fell in love with her. But she was only part of my life due to my work and her friendly nature. It seemed she hadn't developed such feelings just like I had for her. But I don't know what the matter was. I loved her sense of humor and infectious smile. Something unique about love is that you never know when it will open your heart to feelings and emotions. No matter how cold-hearted you are, it will melt your heart if it has to. I had always been a lab geek, liking the sterile things of the lab instead of the noisy outside world. I was content with my life spending most of my time conducting tests and compiling data. But everything changed when I met Julia, an energetic intern at the lab. At first I was annoyed, but I appreciated her just for work and life over time. So all these feelings for her started when we had to work on one of her projects. I had to analyze data and she was handling the data and record search. Once I realized I was falling for her, I asked her to date to my surprise. She said yes. And we started dating. It was a slow start. But over time, we made a comfortable understanding. We cherished every moment that we spent together. To my surprise, I learned to appreciate the beauty of the outside world. I was becoming more comfortable with social gatherings than I had ever been before. So, after 6 months of dating and making love, her time at our organization ended. Now she had to complete her degree and start her professional life. Then we started dating outside of work. We would go hiking, try new cuisines and explore the city. Sometimes she also spends her weekends at my place. I was happier than ever before. She told me she had found something special in me and was determined to make it work with me. Despite our busy schedules, we always met. We also talked about the future because we had found happiness with each other, which is rare and unique. At that time, we had been together for 3 years and had shared many joyful moments. At that time, we had been together for 3 years and had shared many joyful moments. But without any reason, we started to have differences because we argued more frequently over petty issues. At first, we both tried to avoid these issues, but the issues only seemed to get worse. So I decided to confront them if I had to save my relationship. So one day we sat down for a walk. We were defensive, but we understood each other's perspectives. We listened to each other's concerns. It wasn't easy, but we had to rebuild our relationship, which we indeed did. So this one weekend, I had to go outside the city for work. When I returned, after 4 days, I felt something was off with Julia. She had been distant from me. It seemed that her mind was occupied with something else. I tried to talk to her about it, but she ignored my concerns. "What happened to you, Julia?" I asked her politely. "Nothing happened. You are just being paranoid," Julia replied. And there, I was amazed but silent. As the weeks went by, I became more and more suspicious. Julia started to spend less and less time with me, avoiding my calls and texts. And whenever she was with me, I noticed she spent most of her time on her mobile phone. At first, I assumed that maybe she was catching up with her friends or scrolling through social media. But as time passed, I became annoyed because she constantly checked her phone, even during our dinner. Eventually, I decided to check her phone secretly. So one day when I was sleeping at my place, I took her phone and went outside. As I went through her messages, an unknown man frequently sent her messages with some busy about intimate feelings. I felt my heart sank, but I was relieved when I realized these passages had only been received. Julia hadn't replied to any of those words. So that time, I promised to be more present in our relationship and communicate my feelings better within the next few days. I was happy because my promise to myself had worked and we were again fully committed to our relationship. Our broken feelings started healing and we built a more resilient relationship. This time, I also apologized to my wife for being so rude in previous days and said that I still loved her the same as I had already done. The days passed with full charm in our relationship. However, one day we disagreed on a non-serious issue. It all started when I noticed she had left the bath towel on the bed again. I asked her politely several times before to not do that because it created such a mess on the bedsheet. But she kept doing that. "Can you please hang your towel on the balcony outside?" I asked. "I think it's not a big deal. Why does it matter so much?" She sighed. I could feel her frustration. "It's just courtesy. It's not so hard to do, Julia," I usually reply. "I know that it's not hard, but you just argue with me over everything," she said, becoming defensive. "I'm not arguing. I respect you," I said. So in this way, we continued to argue for several minutes. And then she realized that she was making a big deal out of nothing. And then she apologized. This minor disagreement brought us closer and helped us learn how to survive these situations efficiently. As we were about to complete our 4 years, the relationship, I decided to finally get married. We had been through many ups and downs, but it was time to create a stronger bond. One day while we were hiking, I proposed to her. "Julia, will you marry me?" I asked. She was surprised and her eyes filled with tears. "Yes, of course, I will." She replied. From that day on, we started planning our wedding. We were busy choosing the venue and deciding on the guest list. I couldn't wait to marry the love of my life. But more importantly, I would make a commitment that would continue for the rest of my life. As we exchanged our vows. On our wedding day, I felt a blast of emotions inside me. After the ceremony, our reception was filled with laughter, music, and dance. We were about to start a new chapter of our lives together. As the day passed by, our love continued to grow. We had challenges but always worked together with love and patience and cherished each other. After a few months, she was offered her dream job outside the city, a 4-hour drive from our home. She was excited about the opportunity, but I was sad about being away. She also became anxious as the day approached when she had to travel to a new city. But we promised to make this long-distance relationship work. I knew it would be hard, but I didn't want to lose hope. And her on the first weekend, she came to visit me for 2 days. I met her with a bouquet in my hands. We hugged tightly and all my sadness and worries went away. Over 10 months, she always made the trip to see me every weekend. We would spend time together exploring the city or just cuddling up. But 3 months had passed by then and she only visited me once. She would not even return my calls or texts back. Her messages only included excuses for her workload and busy. I thought love could endure any distance, but that was not the case in my relationship or seemed so. After another month, I was depressed and couldn't take it anymore. So I hired a private investigator to find out if Julia was cheating on me because I wanted to keep it discreet. After a few days, he reported back with shocking news. He told me that my wife had been seeing a man at a local hotel on regular days and they had been spending most of the nights together. I was devastated. My trust and feelings were shattered. However, when I tried to contact him again to get more information about that AP, he was nowhere to contact. My place wasn't responding and I didn't know what to do. I wished I had just talked to my wife and worked things out instead of hiring this private investigator living with these painful realities. One day, my colleagues told me something that made me cry over the beautiful relationship between husband and wife. I saw Julia at a hotel with an unknown man. My colleague said, "No, it can't be true." I replied with tears in my eyes. I also didn't want to believe it at first, but I followed them going into an apartment while holding each other's hands. He said again. I felt a punch in my gut. I couldn't believe what was said. My wife was the love of my life, but now she seemed so strange to me. So that was the time when I had to confront her. All of my love for her wholly vanished. No, I only had betrayal, rage and revenge. I took my weekend off and drove to her place where she was residing. But to my surprise, she had moved to another place some 5 months ago. There was another betrayal, another lie. I took her new address from the neighbors and instantly vent as I entered her building. I could see her door wide open. I could hear her talking to someone with love and laughter. She was sitting on the sofa and had her head leaning against the other man's shoulder. She was held in his arms. I turned around the sofa and stood before them. I saw my wife sitting with my hard private investigator. They both were shocked, but I was devastated. I don't know what came over me. I was just feeling lonely. She said now I realized that she had taken my love for granted. I couldn't forgive her for betraying me. So you were just feeling lonely. Are you out of your mind? Just sit with him and make your loneliness disappear. I uttered with anger and pain. The time will come when she will realize what she has done to me and our beautiful relationship. But there will be no chance to recreate those moments. The only thing she would have are regrets.